Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sounds from a Distance. I am your host, Tyra, and today I have a special guest with me. I have Professor Christine Humbert, Professor of Studio Arts. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Christy Herbert. I teach at the college. I've been teaching at Landmark since the first summer that it opened, summer of '86. So I have been here for an unusually long amount of time, and I've had, over that long period of time, I've more or less grown up professionally with the college and had a lot of different roles.
So you came into Landmark specifically to teach ceramics or just like art in general?
No, I actually came into Landmark with a master's in teaching English as a second language.
Oh, wow.
I had just come off of working in a refugee camp in Thailand for 2 years, and I was very interested. My father has dyslexia and my brother has dyslexia, and I was very interested in this brand new college, and I thought I would just take a summer job and see what it was like. And I thought that my background in teaching English to speakers of English as a second language would work really well at Landmark, because that's a lot what dyslexia is like. So I got the job, and I started as an English teacher and a tutor. And then I slowly evolved from there into getting very interested in learning disabilities and teaching and learning at a very deep level, and I ended up teaching and developing a number of education courses over a couple decades. And all the while that I was doing that, I was also very interested in art and a potter, a ceramic artist on the side. So at a certain point, I decided that we had to have a studio at Landmark because it's a no-brainer that ceramics would be amazing for anywhere, but Landmark in particular. So I spearheaded the effort to get the studio going, not knowing whether I would end up even teaching, but wanting to get it started. Once we got the studio established, I went back to college for an MFA in ceramics.
Oh, okay, because I was also going to ask, like, so did you learn ceramics separately before you started teaching it, or like was it something that happened like as you were going?
I learned it, I started doing ceramics when I was in high school, and I did some in college, and then I was doing it as a kind of hobby that was perfect for teaching at Landmark, which can be very intensive, right? It's just a complete, quiet, hands-on activity. So I had developed a lot of experience before I then went and got my MFA. And I was a member of a local pottery studio called Clayworks for many years, where I sold my work and helped run a clay studio. But so I kind of came into it with a lot of experience, and then it was great to go and get my Master's of Fine Arts in ceramics and go be able to study it more deeply and just bring myself up to date on contemporary art. And it also meant that I could teach, because you can't teach at a college without having the degree. So I couldn't use my master's of teaching in ESL and legitimately teach in the art department. So I was highly motivated to get my degree, because I knew that I would love teaching here, teaching art and teaching ceramics. So that's what I did, Tyra.
So what's your experience been like of teaching art specifically to neurodivergent students? Have you taught like neurotypical students, or do you see a difference?
At a certain point, the longer you teach and the longer you live, the more neurodivergent everyone seems. And the less the categories matter, and the more the how, really essentially, how is someone doing? Are they feeling safe and welcome and thriving in the educational environment? That's my question, right? Are they motivated and passionate? And if the answer to any of those is no, like no, they're not feeling safe, no, they're not thriving, no, then I'm looking really deeply for what's going on. Like what can I do as a teacher to support them to have a better experience? But I could probably talk from now until Christmas about neurodivergence. And, I do think that there's a lot of new faculty coming to Landmark, and there's a big turnover of people like me who are just starting to retire, and the people who founded the college are moving out, and a whole new crop of people are coming in, which is very exciting and very good. And I'm mentoring some of the new faculty. Like, I'm working with them. Part of my job is to have lunch an hour a week with the new ceramics person. And oftentimes the new teachers are like, well, what? I've taught here and there, and now I'm at Landmark, and it doesn't feel that different. How's it different? And I think I like to say, teaching at Landmark, teaching at other places, you can get away with some weak teaching skills, but at Landmark you can't, because if you take at another place, if you look at a classroom and you take the 2 or 3 students that are struggling the most, and then you take the 2 or 3 from all those classes and put them into one class together, that's what you have at Landmark.
Yeah.
Along not only the struggles, but the brilliance and the humor and all of the wonderful things, right? So if you're teaching a group of students, there's a lot of divergence and diversity. If you're teaching a group of students, if you want to teach here, you've really got to care a ton about wanting to understand and accept and not judge the students, and figure out, it's an amazing, wonderful neurodivergent puzzle to be okay, every day, what am I going to do to make this group work? What am I going to do to reach this particular student who's not able to do any work or seems really frustrated or whatever is going on? So that's how I'm looking at neurodivergence, is it's a hidden phenomenon. So the main thing is trying very hard as a teacher not to judge, not to make the kind of typical glib judgments that our culture makes, like person's a slacker, person's not trying, person doesn't have self-control, whatever it is. So that's a kind of a quick response, Tyra. I don't know if it's enough of a response.
No, it's a very in detailed response. So I know that there are a bunch of different types and styles of ceramics. Are there any ones that you feel more drawn to, that you personally like making compared to others, or things you personally like, work you like of other people's compared to?
By the way, your questions are excellent. I love them. I'm going to be leading a study abroad trip to Japan this summer at Landmark.
Oh.
The 4th time that I'll be teaching a course called The Intersections of Art and Culture of Japan. I lived in Japan a year. After college, I taught a year in Japan, and I'm very, very interested in Japanese ceramics. I really love, and that plays into my work very much. I'm not interested in perfection. I'm very interested in subtlety, in what happens to the medium, how we use pieces that we're working with. So the kind of work that I do is I do both sculptural work, and then I do a lot of functional work. I make because it's fun, and I happen to have 2 children who are right around the age where a lot of their friends are getting married or they are getting married. So I am on a major wedding present circuit for several years now, making big platters and making really interesting pieces as gifts or for auctions or whatever. I'm privileged enough that I don't have to support myself off of my work. But I do a lot of different kind of work, and I'm interested I'm very influenced by Japanese pottery, and I'm also influenced by another kind of deep and abiding interest of mine is the use of color and abstraction on the surface of forms in terms of decorating. So yeah, again, I could go on, but I don't want to bore your listeners.
No.
I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. On some level, answer my question. So you said that you are, because a bunch of people your kids know are getting married, so you're making a lot of things. So do you use a lot of the things you make? Like, do you make things to, I guess, for use? Because once I took your class, because I was interested in ceramics, like just on my own. I've always been like, oh, I want to try it.
Yeah, that's why I keep telling you to come back.
I wanted to, but unfortunately, by the time I registered,
Right.
class was already filled up, and there was really nothing I could do about that. But
Right.
I am really like, I love, because I'm like a person who really likes crafts, I really love the idea of making things that I could use. Like this bag, I crocheted it. Like it took me so long
That's
to
beautiful.
do, but I did it, and I'm happy that I
Yeah.
did it, that I have utility for like some of
Yeah.
the things I make. So is that like sort of the same thing?
Oh,
with you?
absolutely. I mean, our someone told me many years ago that if you have a lot of your own work in your house, it's like looking in a mirror like a narcissist. Which kind of turned me off, like, you're just admiring your work. And then after a while I got over that, because I do have made the work, a lot of the work that I have in my house, and I have a ton of pottery in my house from my own and others, is pottery that I love, and I want to live with it, and I want to use it, and I want it to be part of our family. And the same is true for my family, my husband's family, my friends. My pottery is everywhere. So if you're a good friend of mine, like most of my close friends just have, I love making pot. I love, connecting. What is better than being with friends and family around food? And that's what pottery, oftentimes the kind of pottery I'm making is doing. It's about celebrating, like, here's this platter for the birthday we're celebrating, or here's this, here are these plates that we're putting out before we light a candle and sit down together. So I look at it, I do look at pottery that way. I'm definitely, if I want to, I've made work that's exactly what I want to serve my food on. So the shape, the size, the color, and yeah. And then friends come over and go, I'll have some of those. And so I'm making more, So, yeah, definitely.
So, have you ever made anything specifically for, like, I guess, showcase or, like, an art show? Or
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, I have. I've made, like, you can, I have to say that I have not pushed myself as hard to try to show my work as I should, and that's what every artist says. I'm actually right now in the process of developing a series of sculptures in my home studio that I hope to show. But I have had shows in galleries, and I show here, in this gallery, I show my work. I just had a show, I just showed my work as part of a town show in my town. Not a lot, but yes. And now that I'm in something called phased retirement, I'm working half-time at Landmark now. I have more time. I have a studio at home. I'm making a lot of work. So, I'm going to have more time. That's part of what I was hoping to do partially in retirement, is just the peace of mind and the quiet and the time to develop bodies of work. Plus, I'm really psyched to be teaching a highly advanced course in the spring that's never been offered before, for students who have kind of taken every other ceramics course and want to go
Even
really
further?
deep. Yep, really deep on the wheel, and really, more challenging. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, like there's something that popped into my mind where you were talking, but it kind of like left my mind. But it was it was a comment I wanted to make about how one of the reasons why I even took your ceramics class is because apart from being interested in ceramics, is that I felt like it would be something that is really relaxing, and that is something that I did feel like, even when I was working on my own work myself outside of class, it's one of those few things where the homework didn't feel daunting as much as homework from other subjects that I do, because it is just so relaxing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need a lot more of it. We are, it's such almost a cliche that everything we're doing is digital, and even writing, we're dictating and we're talking, and we just are hungry for touch, right? We're hungry for touch, for, even if it's touching a pencil to a paper, or touching clay, or, weaving or crocheting. I think we're meant to do that. This is what we're meant to do as humans, and it's such a relief when we get back to it. But I also think that clay is an interesting medium because a lot of times students here at Landmark take ceramics and they come in and they're like, I'm not an artist. I suck at drawing. I don't like art. And then all of a sudden they get their hands in clay and it's like, oh, actually, this is something I'm really drawn to and really good at. And they're surprising themselves because it's a completely different intelligence to mold something with your hands than to draw with your hand, than to draw or to create digital or do what you're doing with the radio show. So I think it really pulls on some, I'm sure at some point down the road we'll be able to scan our brains, and if you scanned for much more detailed information, and if we scanned 200 Landmark College student brains, and it was all color coded for gifts, for giftedness here and challenges here, the way we understand the brain already, like you might struggle with reading, for sure there's an unusual amount of talent around this hands-on mechanical visual spatial intelligence. Like I'm blown away by it, by many of the students. I mean, you were really talented. I remember that about you. Like I think you could see that was something that was just such an excellent vehicle for expression for you. And that's exciting to me, like to have someone come in that's not even an art student. They're just coming in and they're like, oh, this is a whole world here. So, I'm always hoping like, well, if I can turn someone on to ceramics as a lifelong hobby, as a way to express themselves and to calm themselves and to ground themselves, my work is done. It's exciting. I think it's great. Yeah.
So have you been interested in or tried in any other type of art before?
What's interesting is I am probably one of the few art faculty who was a highly, highly focused on ceramics. And the other art form that I've done is, and now that we have a degree that's called a Bachelor of Arts in Integrated Arts, I am a really, my original bachelor's degree was in English, and I love writing, and I do a lot of creative writing, and so that is my other major art form. I read a lot and I write a lot to this day, and it's another thing I'm wanting to do in retirement. But other art forms I've dabbled in, I haven't seriously developed my abilities. I've taken classes, but I've just stayed in this zone of being very interested in ceramics.
And how many students who have come across your ceramics course do you think tend to stay in that area, or maybe go on to have a career
in ceramics?
Yes.
Very few, because it's such a rare and challenging field. Like to get a job teaching ceramics at a college is like winning the lottery. It's so lucky. It's so wonderful. And there aren't that many jobs out there. And people who try to make their living making pottery, it's a long, hard slog. Any craft person, you just have to love it so much and be so resourceful that you make it happen. There are some students who have gone on and continued with ceramics. A couple who are still doing ceramics have gone on for MFAs and are doing ceramics, but very, very few. Many who are still doing it. I hear from a lot of students who are doing it, continuing to develop their work and maybe sell it a little bit on the side and have a dream of continuing with it.
And I'm not sure if this is the same thing as ceramics, or I don't know why my mind kind of
sure
puts them together, but people who make sculptures via chiseling is it sort of the same thing, or is it completely different?
Well, I think one way to think about it is to think about what's the material you're working with. So you can sculpt with clay, you can sculpt with wood and chip away at it and carve it, you can sculpt with marble, you can sculpt with a lot of different mediums. So in that sense, sculpting is the method, right? And I've been teaching a while now a sculptural ceramics class, and now the new faculty member, Cindy Ludlam, even as we speak, is teaching a sculptural ceramics class. So in the sense of clay doesn't really get chipped, but it definitely, you can think about it as one way to make a large ceramic sculpture is to take a block of clay and remove clay from it, subtract or add, right? So you can think about it in those general terms, like we take it away to make the shape, and then we begin to add back to add features or whatever we're trying to make on it.
Yeah. And do you think like the hands-onness of molding clay makes it much better to maneuver than like other forms of art where it's still hands-on, but you have to kind of use a tool to apart from like being able to directly put your hands on and make what you're trying to make?
That's such a smart question and really interesting. I think one way to think about clay is it's plastic, right? It you add water and it can come back to life, and so a lot of other mediums, right? Like if you're working with wood, once you chip, you're done, right? Marble, you're done. You've chipped it. You can't wet it down and add it back, right? You can't mess around with it. Now on a painting, on a canvas, you can paint over. So that's another way to think about it. You can keep layering and adding. But the real thing with ceramics is you can manipulate the medium with your hands in many shocking and surprising ways. And the big trick is always, you probably remember this from me teaching, it's all about timing, right? Like if it's like messing around with someone past the point of messing, you should stop messing with them where they're going to blow up at you, right? Kind of thing, where the clay is dry, it's done, you've had the conversation with it, you can't, I see students all the time, they're coming in, they're trying to spray water on it and chip at it, and it's like, no, they're, but then again, what's miraculous about it is then there are these insane saves, right? And
it's just definitely more forgiving in terms of like you're able to make more mistakes and fix it.
And you are, and then on the other hand, it's not forgiving, and for the opposite reason of like you're chipping the wood, but then you're not going to put the wood through a 2100 degree Fahrenheit oven and see whether it blows up, right? Like, or cracks, or right, or so it's both forgiving, and then it's really it's so great for me, like what I want students to learn to do in that studio is to let go when things crack and break and fall and blow up and someone else bumps their piece and whatever it is, because that's life, right? Like, I sound like a Hallmark card, but it is, you've got to really, the medium is so prone to, while it's forgiving, it also can just shock you. Like, you think it's all good to go, you put it in the kiln and son of a gun if the whole head doesn't blow off,
Yeah, the one thing I learned definitely, both from your class but also just watching videos of people making clay things, is that especially if you're making something big, you really have to like hollow out the middle, because if it's too like compact, it is going to explode.
Totally. And even if you hollow it out, some things can go wrong. I just had a friend who's never done any clay go, hey, can you help me make a gift, a holiday gift for my boyfriend of a 2.5 foot abstract nude woman sculpture? I'm like, what, are you nuts? I texted back, what, are you nuts? Like, this is a really, really advanced form. Like, I mean, what people think is, so even hollowing something out, you never know. Like things go wrong all the time. Glazes go wrong, the firings go wrong. So you have to be pretty open to not getting too attached to your work and getting attached to the idea. Like, I always tell students, it's just like when you're drafting a paper, right? If you just lose the draft, it's not the draft, it's the work and the process you went into to get to where it was. So you should be able to go back and like, what do you remember? What can you do again? Like, let's keep moving this forward, whether we have the physical thing or not. What remains is what's important, like what remains in your head around how you were approaching it. right? You can get back on the wheel. If you centered once, you'll be able to center again. It might take you 3 times, but
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you're going to be able to do it. Same deal.
Yeah, but you should watch out for those machines because they go fast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like, I remember when I was trying to make a cup and like I pressed on the like pedal a little bit too loud and it just like
Yeah.
flew.
Oh, absolutely. That's, you've got to have that experience. Yep. Yep.
So we are coming to the
Okay.
end of our interview, but I just want to ask if someone like wasn't sure maybe whether they should or shouldn't like give ceramics a try, what would you say to them?
Give it a try. You know, I've rarely met, the only people who really shouldn't take ceramics are people who have like sensory issues around like messes
Yeah.
and oozy stuff. That's going to be a losing battle. If you have really severe OCD, it's going to be challenging in there. It's messy, it's gross, you know, and you don't need to push yourself into that if that's the case, but that's rare. Otherwise, like, it's fun. It's a great community in there. You know, in the studio, place to hang out, make friends. Healthy outlet, right? Okay.
You heard it here, guys. Give it a try. I again would like to thank Christine for taking time out today to do this interview with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so nice to see you again.
See you guys later. Goodbye.